Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Gamestars League. We are in day 7. That's right, day 7 of action. Group G is up to bat today. Tomorrow is Group H, and then on Thursday and Friday, we'll be figuring out all those second and third placements and who's going to be moving on to our finals. What's up, everybody? I'm Andrew Guy. Joining me today is my co-caster, Eric Benamou, former champion, world champion, two-time world champion, even though I know you don't like to talk about WCG. Eric, how you doing today, bro?
Yeah, just one time at an event that happened somewhere else in the world. I'm doing great, and I'm really excited about today. We're gonna get into all that in a bit, but it's definitely one of the strongest groups that we've seen to date, so it should be a very good day.
Yeah, definitely. You know, players from all around the world, Europe and the Middle East, are gathered here at the Gamestars League to battle it out for the lion's share of over $30,000, over $40,000 up to grab, Eric. And one of the biggest things about this tournament, other than the BO5s and BO3s and all that, is our deck selection format and how much these cards play into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think even though this gets updated all the time, and for people that have seen since day one might be questioning why is it always the same cards, it's not that it doesn't update. It updates, but these are just the best cards in the meta. We've seen it over and over again. People that use these cards in their deck tend to come out on top.
Yeah, and you know, the way that it works here in Gamestars League is that every player has to bring 3 decks to competition. Each one of those decks they have to win with, and those decks can repeat 6 of the same cards, but 2 of them have to be unique every single time. And Eric, we've talked about it a lot on broadcast. Changing up those 2 cards can really change up how strong a deck is. I want to talk to you really quickly about the shifting meta. Is it starting to shift online? Are we starting to see more P.E.K.K.A.s? Are we starting to see more Goblin Giant Sparkies because of how popular those E-Barbs are? You can see they're in over half the decks on the screen.
Absolutely. I think over time, it's what we spoke about originally, right? We said that there was going to be a meta the first week, the first couple weeks of the balance changes, then it shifts over in the second month of balance changes, which we're heading into right now, and then in that third month of balance changes is where we get the absolute best decks, and that's what we're seeing right now. I have seen a lot more P.E.K.K.A.s. I have seen a little bit of a shift, and it's all about adapting. Another thing that we want to say about adapting is adapt to not use Golem, right? We saw all the decks
Yes.
there. They all have positive win rates for the most part, except that Golem. It's the only one with a higher usage rate that doesn't even break 20% win rate.
It's crazy. Lucas GSM, so-called Burkan Financier, One Hive Hunter, and Broken are the gentlemen that have moved forward already from groups A through F. Today in Group G, we've got Hugo, Demon, Eternity, and Typhoon. And Eric, it's one of those pleasures that we have where we actually know a couple of these guys.
Yeah, and I'm really excited about the fact that Eternity and Hugo aren't facing off in the first round, right? Those are the 2 names that we really know from this deck, from this bracket, and I'm very excited to possibly see them in a winners match. I expect at least Hugo. I haven't seen Eternity as much lately, but we've seen very nice stuff out of Hugo.
And as you just said, Eric, it's going to be Hugo and Demon starting us off today, and then Eternity and Typhoon as our second matchup. The third match is to be determined. That will be our winners match, deciding who will be moving on and who will be going into our group finals. And of course, the fourth match of the day, our fourth BO5, will be an elimination match. So that's enough out of us. That's enough out of me and Eric. Let's hear from our players today from Group G, from their own mouths.
Всем привет, меня зовут Андрей, мне 19 лет, я с города Казани, играю игру на протяжении 5 лет. Хьюго очень сильный игрок, выступает на довольно сильном уровне, но это будет фаворит моей группы. Вот до изменения баланса я готовил деки к этому турниру, я уже научился играть какими-то деками, и там половина карт из них пофиксили, и тяжело уже стало, пришлось придумать какие-то новые стратегии, новые тактики, появились проблемы. Не, настрой, конечно же, только на топ-1, ничего более, будем готовиться, будем собираться. Вот. Ну, из любимых карт могу выделить свиней. Вторая по значимости, наверное, это Мега-рыцарь. Ну и раньше я играл еще много Хогом, но сейчас в такую мету Хогом играть довольно тяжело, поэтому Мега-рыцарь, свиньи, наверное, сейчас основная. Хотелось бы, конечно, выиграть этот турнир, но загадывать не будем. Для начала пройти группу, занять топ-3 и пройти дальше.
My name is Hugo. I'm 16 and I'm from France. I've been playing Clash Royale for 5 years. I think my favorite card is Miner because it's in the most skilled deck actually. I didn't know two of my opponents in my group, but I know Eternity, and I know that he is playing a lot of Golem, Lava and E-Giant, card with a lot of Elixir. So yeah, I prepared my deck with it. I'm practicing like 2 or 3 hours per day. I think that I can win this competition because I am practicing a lot right now.
Меня зовут Султан, мне 17 лет, я с Казахстана, город Нур-Султан. Играю в игру 4,5 года. Я там подготовил 4 деки, я ими постоянно играл в день по 4-5 часов. Мои любимые карты это Арбалет и Электрогигант. Электрогигант против колод, где нету зданий, а Арбалет против быстрых и средних по стоимости. Я постараюсь показать хороший результат и занять призовые места, и даже топ-3 в турнире.
Well, you heard Typhoon say it there, Eric. There are no buildings for the Electro Giant, which is why it is one of his favorite cards. And we've definitely seen that card be abused quite a bit so far in the tournament. Yesterday, we heard One Hive talk specifically about how he thinks it was just going to win him the day yesterday, and it honestly did. Talk to me a little bit about the Electro Giant.
Well, we know how strong it is. We understand that if you're going to use a Golem deck, you might as well use an E-Giant deck because not only is it stronger offensively, does more damage, but it also takes care of troops for the same cost. So before, I think we saw a lot of Golem because the card didn't exist. But when you're talking really elixir for elixir and utility wise, I definitely think you should go E-Giant over Golem. And like One Hive said, if you have the skill level that he has, which is someone like Hugo or Eternity that we know of, obviously we can get surprised here, you just have to play it safe at this group stage, know that you have the strongest deck and move on, and then figure out a better strategy when you're playing against the number one from each group.
Yeah, I mean, a big shout out to the developers over at Supercell for all these new cards coming into the game. The Mother Witch, the Firecracker, the Electro Giant. You know, you think about the mechanics behind all the cards they've been adding in, even something like the Goblin Cage, and they really have changed the game so much. And specifically yesterday, we talked about the Electro Giant and how you NATO troops into it as opposed to NATOing troops away. And it really is kind of counterintuitive when you talk about these beatdown decks, but it really is unbelievably strong right now. And you know, other things that we're starting to see, as we talked about at the very top of the show, is the meta shifting. And I honestly do think that we'll start to see a lot more P.E.K.K.A, or at least we should see more P.E.K.K.A as we move forward in this meta. And it's just going to be about the players adapting. Last thing before we get into the action, Eric, is Eternity and Hugo. We heard them kind of talk about one another in the pre-show interviews. Do you think we'll actually see Eternity rock Golem? And talk to me a little bit about your history with Hugo. We'll go one at a time.
Well, Eternity is one of those Golem players. I told you before the show, even before we saw the video, we might actually see a win from Golem today, right? He's actually I remember playing against him in a bunch of different tournaments, and he would one-trick Golem the same way Royal would, and he would get away with it. He has beat a full-on in No-Till Worlds, the previous editions. I think he beat 2 full countries just using Golem. So he might use it, but it's a little bit what we spoke about, right? He used to use that when E-Giant didn't exist. So will he make the transition to E-Giant? I'm not really sure, but if there's someone to use Golem, I'm sure it's him.
And you have to remember, guys, if you're going to rock Golem, that means you're expecting to win in two different BO5s with it, which means you're expecting to win with it twice. You know, you got to win against the winner or the loser. You have to win in 2 separate sets with that deck. And right now, we see Dark Chocolate with a great Bandit connection on that left-hand side. Hugo at the top of the screen kind of trying to reset right now with his tower already below 1,000 HP. And at the top of your screen, you'll see some cards of old. Obviously, cards that are working together right now in the current meta. Maybe we'll see Mortar and Valkyrie. But at the bottom of your screen, we're seeing definitely a shift towards what is new.
And we saw Demon, right? In his video, he said that his favorite cards were the Hoggies and the Mega Knight, right? And if we were talking about week 1 of this competition, I'm sure we would see that Mega Knight Hoggies deck at least once come out from him. But you said it. The meta has shifted. And ever since that week 1, I don't think we saw that deck anymore.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty shocking because it was pretty strong in that first week. It had a pretty decent win rate, but it really is, obviously, these guys are playing hours and hours outside of GameStars League, and they're recognizing either on the ladder or in grand challenges that deck just isn't working. There are too many people that ran it initially, and now there are too many counters for it out there. So bottom of your screen, you can see we have this no win condition deck that is very, very strong. It's got elements of bridge spam in there. We're going to see how it piles up against this Mortar deck that is very defensive, but it could have trouble as we get into double and triple.
And I really like that defense out of him. He is going to lose all of his troops, but after all, he's in a decent position. He doesn't mind taking some damage on the right, because usually these bridge spam decks, it's a 1 tower game, right? It's very, very hard for a bridge spam deck to actually get enough damage on both towers to actually make this a viable like 2 tower game. And I think Hugo knows the fact that he won't take 2 towers either. So at this point, it's about mitigating that damage and making sure that you can stay in the game long enough to maybe get some minor poisons down the road in double or triple elixir.
So Hugo's definitely still in the game, but kind of hanging on by a thread right now. That's a great Heal Spirit plus Bandit connection there in the middle, and it's going to deal a lot on the board here. It's going to get cleaned up, but as you can see, down in elixir and down in damage is Hugo. Eric, he cannot use his Mortar offensively, or at least he has not used it offensively, and there's no way he's going to get those E-Barbs on tower. What is his key to victory?
At this point, it's kind of just hold on as much as you can, and in that triple elixir, you better cycle Miner and Poison over and over again. The problem is he hasn't had enough elixir to actually get a Miner with the Poison, and there's no real troops that you need the Poison for defensively, so they have to continuously come down together. He's going E-Barbs instead, and it might have paid off right there.
Yeah, look at that. E-Barb on the tower there. Left-hand side going to connect for another swing to bring it down to just below 1,000 with those poison ticks ticking away. That cannon card's going to need no attention there. Nice job with the poison. And E-Barbs are back in with that Mother Witch right behind. Hugo has defended with those skeletons on their own numerous times, and he kind of got away with one there. Mother Witch not spawning any hogs.
Yeah, and you have to be very careful. What happened there for Demon is there is this very kind of weird interaction right now where the elite barbarians, if they're placed there and you try to pull them in the middle, if the placement isn't perfect, one of them will go straight to tower. I don't know why it's like that, but he needs to be very careful in future matches. Demon, I think he still will win this one, but that almost cost him the game.
Yeah, he's doing a really good job predicting those skeletons and taking them out of play, which in turn is making it a lot harder for Hugo to defend efficiently. And now we see that Bandit up high again on top of that Mortar. Piggy coming down, everything at the bridge. This is going to be a lot to deal with for Hugo, but he's still in this.
Minor Poison could actually win him the game here, but he needs to get it down. There's 18 seconds left. I like that he actually didn't place it there because there is enough time to lose the game if you don't have enough elixir to defend. But one more defense, and I think at this point you need to Minor Poison. There's not much else you can do. He might actually be able to cycle here. No fireball, and he's good, and nice comeback.
Wow. Very, very nice comeback. And you can see Demon Hunter physically annoyed by how that interaction went. And that's the thing. When you rock these no win condition decks, when you rock these decks with no big spell, the end of the game gets really, really difficult. Yes, it's double. Yes, it's triple, and you can overwhelm your opponent. But you saw Hugo kind of figured out, and he got his number defensively. Even though we saw predictive barb barrels and Mother Witches on the skeletons, Hugo always had something else ready to go.
Yeah, Hugo really got his head back in the game. That's a little bit about those top players, right? He was down so much that for the majority of us, it would have been like, I have a minor deck. There's no way I'm coming back. He understood it. He also had a little bit of good fortune with the Elite Barbarian getting on tower and not going to the middle troop. But that's an interaction that happens, and you have to be ready for it if you're playing at this level. You need to make sure that it pulls. If it is a half a tile over to the right, one of them will go straight to tower. So you need to be very careful about that.
Yeah, the shine is maybe starting to wear off a little bit on the Elite Barbarians as we're seeing them used so much. We're starting to maybe see some of the holes in their armor when you talk about interactions. You're starting to see how easily they are to defend sometimes. And again, you talk about the kite ability on those units to bring them to the center of the map. As long as you hit that every single time, you can usually make great positive trades. But we saw it happen twice last game, one on either side, where something snuck by and got on tower, whether it was an E-Barb or whether it was an E-Barbs plus the Electro Wizard, and the Electro Wizard getting on tower.
Yeah. And now look, Demon, you had a very, very good shot at going up 1-0 against possibly the favorite to win this group. But at least you know you can win, right? You know that you were in a position to possibly win, and that has to count for something. If you get shut down game one, it feels a lot worse.
Mega Knight up high here. Good job on the Electro Wizard getting it pulled in. Everything should nope. Electro Wizard going to sneak in front of that Mega Knight, and all of a sudden this push that looked really, really nice from Hugo is starting to look a little bit worse here on paper.
If that E-Wiz would have stayed behind, I'm pretty sure we would be seeing either a Mega Knight on tower or at least some damage on tower. And now it's the opposite, right? Like you said, he's actually in a position where he was on the back foot.
Yeah, and it was actually really, really nicely turned around there, and we're basically even here. Goblin Brawler does not get a hit because of that heal spirit.
I don't even know if it was necessary, to be honest. It seemed like he didn't have enough health, but maybe just from Demon saying, let me make sure I don't want to give up any damage here. And at the end of the day, Hugo is leaking and just waiting, so it doesn't really factor into anything that he spent that extra 1 elixir.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what happened there, Eric, and it was a very fortunate moment there for Demon. That way he's able to kind of reset. He knows that they're both back at 10, and now he's technically up just a hair of elixir getting that Mother Witch down first, but obviously not much to write home about here with this change in the Fisherman and the E-Wiz.
Yeah, and I don't really like that Fireball. I think it was a little bit too much. You're kind of in a good position right now. You don't really need to go for that Fireball, and now this is what happens, right? Now you have to over defend because you need those Elite Barbarians up high. Look how much damage, and now the late E-Wiz as well. You got to be very, very calculated when you're playing against the best.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the biggest parts of that, Eric, is spell value early on in games. If you're going to go for spell value on tower and on a troop, you have to know exactly what trade you're making, and that was not a good one in that moment.
Absolutely. He put himself in a bad position where we both knew he was going to have to over defend and overspend and even then take a lot of damage. And now look at how the game has turned. He had complete control, and now it seems like all his offensive and defensive pushes are simply reactionary.
Yeah, and he also, Demon kind of doubled down on the mistake there by getting that bandit in the opposite lane, trying to create a little bit of pressure and maybe a mistake out of Hugo. The problem is you know, Hugo's able to play that Fisherman up high, pull the bandit in, continue to push on the left-hand side, and just continue controlling the game. That's another word that we saw, or that we heard OneHive talk about in his post, you know, performance interview yesterday, being the winner of our day on Group F, was that he was very, very big on just kind of understanding the macro of the game, and it was something that he was really able to pick his opponents apart with.
Yeah, he used the experience to his advantage, and that's what you should do. I've spoken to my players a lot about this. Whenever we would play a little bit of those inexperienced team or the lower portion of the table teams, I would always tell them when we would prepare for matches, this is not a time for us to adapt. This is a time for them to adapt to us. We are the best. We are the champions. They're the rookies. You don't adapt to the rookies adapt to you, right? And that's what OneHive did yesterday, that we've seen so many of the top experienced players in this bracket not do.
Yep, and that's exactly what's happening right here in this set between Hugo and Demon. It's not that Demon's not playing good Clash Royale. I mean, we saw some great stuff out of him in game 1, and game 2 is where we started to see the wheels come off just a little bit, but it's all about that control, and that's why I'm coming back to the word again, is there hasn't been many moments where we see these more experienced players play completely out of control. Yes, we all make mistakes. Yes, there's moments where an interaction doesn't go the way that you think and you have to recover, but otherwise, you have seen both of these guys in Hugo, I mean, in Financier, for instance, and in One Hive yesterday, that they just seem so calm throughout their sets.
And that's it. That's you know, mental in Clash is just as important as that technical ability. We've seen it over and over again in CRL. We've seen it in live events, everything. Those players that are just mentally can bring themselves to just relax and take control of the game, understand that it's still the same game you've played when you play against their friends and everything. Those are typically the guys that you see at the top, right? And I think that's what it comes down to, the control that you're talking about. Hugo maintains calm even in the game that he was down over 1,000 damage points. You never saw him frustrated. We have the camera on, and he just seemed like he was okay throughout all of it.
So here we go, Demon Chocolate fighting for his life here. Definitely still has a life left, as this is a double elimination bracket, and I'm very glad to see that he's switched up his deck here. Flying Machine comes out, met by a Fireball. Not the end of the day there for Demon, as we see the Piggies coming out, which we would expect. We heard him talk about him in the pre-show, and we see a Flying Machine early. Fireball's out. Good response here with the E-Barbs.
It seems like he's going to his comfort deck. He said his best deck, or the deck that he most liked card-wise, was Hoggy's Mega Knight, and this is exactly what we're seeing here. And I don't mind it, right? You want to try and get a win, get some morale boost up there. Even if you don't win the set, you still have to play another set later, and it definitely feels a lot better to go down 3-1 or 3-2 than it does 3-0.
Definitely, and that second set is just as important as the first. Obviously, it's nice to cruise on through to the finals, get that extra little, you know, cash prize and start battling it out for the 30 grand, but it's double elimination. You can still stay in this, and you can still get to the top of the mountain, even if you lose this first set. So as you said, confidence is everything going into that second set of the day, and right now we're pretty much even. 22-39 top of our screen, 25-34. However, if you look at the far left side of your screen, you will see that Hugo is up 2-0.
Yeah, that's the big important thing. This game is looking pretty tight, but like you said, overall it's nothing like that. It's actually a 2-0 series lead for him, and overall at this point, if you're Demon, I think you have to win this. Not only just because of the confidence that we spoke about, but you said this is your best deck, and you're playing basically a mirror. So if you're playing a mirror and this is your best deck and you lose it, it could get very complicated down the road, not only for you, but your opponents gain confidence.
Here we go, Demon with a nice E-Wiz there to keep all those Piggies at bay, to mitigate a good amount of damage. Actually, just behind by a hair now, and he resets with that Mega Knight in the back. Ahead in Elixir, down in damage. Now we're going to battle it out on the right side of the board with both Mega Knights out of cycle. Will we see Piggies go down on the left-hand side?
I don't think we're going to see them yet, just because I think Hugo is playing that safer game where he's just, you know, let me make sure I don't give up too much, and at the end, when this hits double or triple, I'll take control of this game, which is when we see the best players usually close it out. There's a lot of micro interactions as the time goes on because of how much Elixir is flowing, and I think that plays to an advantage of the better or more experienced player.
Definitely. I mean, Rich and I have talked about it for years, and it's something that we've spoken to you and other coaches, players about, is that Clash Royale is a game of cascading mistakes. Once you make one mistake, the best players will make you pay for that mistake for an entire minute. And as you can see right now, this is probably just going to be towered down. A beautiful Royal Hogs plush Flying Machine push. We talk about the understanding of the macro, and that is just picture perfect. A massive 8 Elixir push or 9 Elixir push on the left-hand side, and nothing there to meet. E-Barbs come down late, and an easy hog connection with the Flying Machine behind. That was a very, very quick 3 up and 3 down, Eric.
It was, and that was a very smart play out of Hugo. Like we saw, the Mega Knight came down, and most of us would have gone those Hoggies on the left. He understood that, you know what, let me go another full cycle, and as soon as he placed that Mega Knight down again, he didn't rush to just get the Hoggies down. He waited to get the Hoggies with the Flying Machine combo together. He was patient, and there was no stopping it. Just a very, very heads-up play, and I mean, Hugo's definitely showing why he's that favorite to win this group.
Yeah, and there you can see right there, Demon Chocolate losing game number 1, and it felt like it was all downhill from there. Only 114 HP remaining on that top left tower. A massive lead early on, and here you can see, Eric, you just said it in the last game, the best players in the world will take advantage in double and triple elixir, and that's what we see every single time in each one of these replays. And yeah, just selling out at the right moments. Hugo, you called it during the game. He recognized the macro. He recognized, all right, let's reset here on the right-hand side. And the other thing that's so simple, but you'll see the best players in the world do it all the time, and I'm sure you've coached them on this, Eric, he probably waits to hit 10 elixir before making his next move 90% of the time. And I know it seems so simple, but that's why that Royal Hogs plus Flying Machine push comes in.
There are very, very few players that can get away with playing at, you know, the just enough elixir. I know there are some, right? There are some that play a very different play style where as soon as they hit 5, they go in, but that's only when they know that their opponent is just as dry on elixir or even more. If it's not the case, you really should wait, just because if he did that push and he didn't have enough elixir to defend, it could have got very, very tricky. The fact that he had a full bar, went in and knew that it was double elixir, he knew that no matter what the push was coming, he had an E-barbs in cycle and he could hold off enough to take tower and survive the game.
And this is the second time in 2 days where we've seen the winner, at least of the first set, who obviously yesterday went on to win the entire bracket, but at least here in Group G, the winner of the first set, recognizing that, look, if this push doesn't work, I might lose my other tower. But I do know that if I don't try to make this push happen, that battle on the other side of the board is one that I'm probably going to lose. And yesterday we saw it with the E-Giants, today we saw it with the Royal Hogs Flying Machine, recognizing that moment and going in for the kill when you have enough elixir to do it. And I really, really liked what I saw out of Hugo today. I mean, he's a guy that I've watched for a couple of years now. I've heard his name in the space for a couple of years. And now as we get into our second bracket, Eric, there's another guy in Eternity who you and I actually know pretty well.
Yeah, we do. I faced him when I was coaching Venezuela back in the day. He swept us with a nice little golem. I would like to forget that. Then I went on to coach Mexico, so that doesn't really count. But yeah, he's a very, very good golem player. He's been around for a long time. Never broke through to the CRL scene, but he's always been around the pros, right? When you see pro brackets, when you see all these things, he usually sneaks in there, plays a couple sets. So he has a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge, but he is a very heavy deck archetype type of player. So I'm curious to see, will he bring out his usual golem, or has he evolved and changed into this new meta? And like you spoke about a little bit earlier, the risk of, I'm gonna go all in and see what happens. I think these are calculated risks when you are that good, right? There's like a percentage in your head of like, this will probably like give me like a 70-80% chance that it'll work, and in the off chance it doesn't, I lose. But you have to take those calculated risks when you're playing at this level, I think.
Yeah, you have to, because we all know what's going to happen if you don't go aggressive or if you don't do something different. We've seen it in other parts of the brackets or in other parts of the tournament where people just continue to do the same thing for 5 minutes and they find themselves losing at the end of the game, and they're kind of like, well, what happened there? They're kind of scratching their head, and a lot of times you'll kind of call it up here in the booth of when they need to make that mid-game adjustment. And again, that's what the best players have done all throughout GSL, or make those mid-game adjustments. So as we wait for Eternity and Typhoon to get ready, speaking on Eternity for just another moment here, you were just saying he's a guy that hasn't broken through to the CRL scene, and a big part of his playstyle is heavy beatdown decks, and we know that in CRL those heavy beatdown decks can be pretty easily punishable. Would you like to see him do something a little bit more light and loose today here in Gamestars, as it isn't CRL, but it is still a place for him to make a name for himself and to make some money?
I would like to see him change it up if he goes through. I think this is a point where, like One Hive said yesterday, you are the better player in what experience and what we've seen before. So don't try to risk it all. Just get through. Get through. It might be a little bit tougher versus Hugo. That's the disadvantage he has, right? One Hive knew that all 3 other players were not at his level. Here you do have to have at least a little bit of a mix-up, because Hugo is possibly better suited for this meta and more practiced at the moment than Eternity. So he does have to take a little bit of risk, but I would like to see him stay somewhat comfort to at least assure that he can get to that second, third place and then fight to move on.
And when you use that word comfort, we'll circle back to Typhoon now, who in the pre-show interviews, you heard him talk a little bit about how much he's been playing with new decks and how he's got 4 new decks that he's been practicing with for several hours a day. And I really like hearing that from him. I mean, obviously, he's a guy that I don't know well. We haven't spoken about him a whole lot today yet, but he is someone that has said, I've adapted to the meta and I've been practicing a lot. And something that we talked about yesterday, Eric, is people that, and honestly, the whole tournament, if you haven't been adapting and you haven't been practicing, you're probably going to lose.
You are, and this is not a game that you could just get away with not practicing. This isn't one of those games that, you know, oh, I'll just come back to it. I have the natural talent. We've seen it over and over again throughout the years. You know, my best friends are CMC and Chris, and when they stopped playing, you saw the difference, right? You can't just breeze on through when other people are there. There is that natural talent because, like I said, CMC and Chris were just that much better than everyone else when it came to natural talent, but when the work stopped being there, you saw them kind of drop off. This is a game of perfection. Every little interaction makes a difference, every tile placement, so you need to be practicing constantly, and that might help him a lot. But I think Eternity is also one of those players that will be practicing.
Well, let's see how their practice pays off here. Typhoon at bottom of your screen, Han the Eternal or Eternity at the top, repping the red, and Typhoon going to be our home player for blue today. This is our first game in our BO5 here in our second set of Group G. And just to remind you guys, on Thursday and Friday this week, Eric and I will be working through all those remaining second and third place players to figure out who will be working and fighting in those finals for over $30,000.
And those should be a lot of fun, especially since a lot of those favorite further groups ended up falling in the matches. So we will see a lot of those top tournament players actually fight for their lives in those 2 days. Should be really fun.
And I'm really curious to see all the guys that we've seen already in the second and third place and how much they're going to change up their decks and how much they're going to change up their strategy coming into those elimination games. You know, Eternity, I think, is going to be a great indicator of how much do you have to play your comfort in this, you know, odd meta where beatdown does struggle.
Yeah, and I mean, it's so tough to make that decision just because we've seen it in the past. When you're good enough with the deck, you can win in every meta, but do you want to put yourself in a position where you have to really outplay drastically your opponent because your deck is at a disadvantage from the beginning? It's pretty weird.
Yeah, and that's definitely a thing that happens a lot. We see players do that all the time at the highest level where maybe they do go comfort or they just find themselves in a bad matchup and you have to outplay. That is a big part of professional Clash Royale. You can't just play the matchup game, and here we go, Golem to start things off. We were wondering, he does not disappoint. Eternity, Golem working down the left-hand lane, Goblin Cage, plus Ice Wizard and Dark Prince to respond. What do you think, Eric? Bottom of our screen, Goblin Giant?
Yeah, very, very possibly Goblin Giant, and that's what I was talking about earlier, right? Do you go comfort and put yourself at a disadvantage ever since the game starts? And that's what he's doing. We've seen the Goblin Giant, the E-Giant, sorry, go
sorry,
against...
I said Goblin Giant, but we both meant E-Giant.
Yeah. It goes very, very well against Golem, right? So you're already having to outplay your opponent no matter what happens, just because your deck is already weaker than your opponent.
Yep, and you called it in the pre-show. You know, we were talking about Golem as opposed to Electro Giant, and here we see those original Ice Wizard and Baby Dragon still on the board. A little bit of damage comes in on the tower. We are resetting the defense here, and yeah, we're going to see how this plays out, Eric. We talked about it. It's almost like we talked about this matchup at the beginning of the show, having no idea, and I'm glad that neither of these guys are disappointing.
The only thing I don't like that I'm seeing here out of Typhoon is he's playing his Ice Wizards a little too high. You want to make sure those are alive constantly because that's what buys you all the time against something like Golem and those troops. And time is not only very valuable in this because you don't want tower damage, but your win condition is 8 elixirs. So as much time as you can get to really build that up is even better, especially there. If it would have been a little further back, right, you would have actually been able to go on the offensive right at the bridge, and he doesn't really have any answers for it.
Yeah, instead of sneaking that Electro Giant up front, he decides to go in the back for what you're talking about, Eric. Had that Ice Wizard been placed just a little bit lower, he would have been able to actually turn that last defense into a very good counter push. Now he's going to struggle a little bit with this. He gets some lightning damage in, but those E-barbs are on the board, and he's going to have to kind of rinse and repeat right now.
Yeah, and I think the lightning wasn't the way to go, in my opinion. I mean, he's still in a good position. I would have just liked to not see a lightning onto only one troop and the tower, but it comes down to how good this deck is against Golem, right? We're seeing him literally lightning just the tower and one troop, and he's still winning the game.
Yeah, that's a really, really big indicator of how strong this is matchup-wise right now when you talk about being able to waste that much elixir in double. And here we go. NATO going to come in. Baby Dragon to come out. Should be back to another Goblin Cage up high. There it is to catch the E-barbs. NATO pulling everything together. And this could actually be trouble. The late NATOs and the high Ice Wizards are going to make Typhoon pay for it.
And it all comes down to the spells. We've seen it over and over again. He's wasting, and that was not a good NATO.
No, sir.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what he was thinking with that one. He got very lucky on the reset of that Baby Dragon, but even then he lost the game, and it's the reason. It all comes down to, we said that he was still winning with the lightning, but that doesn't mean that he's going to win, right? It just means that how comfortable he is, and he got a little too comfortable. There was no reason to lightning one troop and the tower when you could start a push. The E-Giant was in hand. If you have that much elixir to go over, start the push. The E-Giant will kill that Night Witch and the Baby Dragon and the Ice Wizard. It kills everything. You don't need to actually lightning it.
Mistakes beget mistakes. The high Ice Wizard from what feels like yesterday at this point, from 5 minutes ago, that high Ice Wizard makes it so that Typhoon cannot get on offense with the Electro Giant. So instead, he has to reset in the back with the Electro Giant. That starts a horrible sequence of events of over-defending and spending too much on offense with his lightnings and actually not getting enough out of it. And it was all just because of that one Ice Wizard being too high. It changed the whole trajectory of the rest of the game.
That and the fact that I think he doesn't understand as well as he should the way this deck is played. You can tell when the best players use this deck and when the players that aren't as used to it use it. We did not see any offensive NATOs. Instead, he would go lightnings. You don't need lightnings. You're spending more than you should when an offensive NATO will probably even do more for you than the lightning because of that E-Giant and the utility and the way it works. We saw it yesterday over and over again from One Hive. He would NATO everything onto that E-Giant, and even though the E-Giant would, you know, get wiped off, he would just start another push and eventually just accumulate so much elixir that he wins the game.
Yeah, and I think comfortability with spells is something that's been also a very, very large indicator of skill level. You talk about that lightning decision making, and of course in this last game we talk about that NATO and needing to use that tornado a lot more was Typhoon, especially when you talk about the cards that were surrounding his win condition.
Yeah, and now he's going up with a mortar, which I'm not 100% sure I love right now. This is a bit tough when you want to play against someone that is so good with heavy decks, right? You're really taking a risk here, and I mean, look, I prefer that than his favorite that he was talking about earlier. Oh, the miss. Ooh, yeah, that's rough.
Yeah, that really hurts. The missed NATO. Mine are going to go to the back with the bats. Baby Dragon going to come out to respond and clean that up. But the missed NATO early on for the King Tower activation, that always hurts.
Yeah, it definitely does. And you have to be very careful with those troops like the Elite Barbarians because, yes, they're fast, but they're also very heavy, right? The troops have density to them. That's part of Clash. Like, those are the little things in Clash that I love that aren't very highlighted when you talk to the casual players or the players that in general that don't know as much. But the reason why NATO can and can't pull some cards is that weight of the card. Everything is factored in. The weight of the Elite Barbarians is actually very heavy, so you can't just pull them with any NATO placement.
Yeah, and that's a really, really great kind of aspect of strategy that you're highlighting, Eric. A lot of people don't talk about density enough, but you'll see the best players in the world regularly body block on defense. If an opponent's giant, goblin giant, E-Giant, golems coming down the lane, you'll see players use that giant to their advantage or that large troop to their advantage and body block defensively, and it's something that I love watching in the game. And that's another aspect when you talk about the tornado and density. There's just so many levels and layers to CR, and this is another tower down. Just brutal defense there. Really tough matchup. and an overzealous single elixir from Typhoon.
Overzealous single elixir, and I mean, look, if I knew that he was gonna play Golem, you knew he was gonna play Golem. Hugo knew. Hugo's grandparents knew. You can't use decks like this. You know what I'm saying? Like it's not. You need to be smart. And if he's not gonna use Golem, what is he gonna use? E-Giant? And if he's not gonna use E-Giant, he's gonna use Lava. Either way, it's a lose-lose situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you really are set on using this style of deck, at least do yourself a favor against a beatdown opponent and give yourself poison, right? Like,
yeah, poison. Maybe
just give yourself at least poison.
Yeah, you could even run the weird versions that Igor runs, right, with the NATO Ice Wiz. Just make your life a little bit easier, or at least give yourself a shot. But deck choice is just as important in you feeling comfortable, but also understanding what your opponent is playing, because you can feel as comfortable as you want, but in a 100-0 matchup, there's no comfortability that will get you through.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really simple thing, but when you're 100-0, there's no way to play out of it. I mean, there's basically no way to play out of it, especially when it's Eternity playing his comfort deck, right? If it's a 100-0 matchup and your opponent is playing a deck that they're okay with, then maybe you can battle out of it, but obviously everyone knows, as you said, his opponent's grandmother knows that he's going to be rocking Golem, and he does it. He does it 2 games in a row. He's picked up more Golem wins today than I think we've seen in the entire tournament in one day. And he's done it against a guy that should have been expecting it.
And it's funny because you say he's gotten more wins than everyone else combined. And this is what we've spoken about time and time again. You can use Golem if you know how to use Golem, and we've seen the difference in the way Eternity plays it and the way everyone else has played it. This is not a deck that you can just drop the cards and it plays itself, as much as we like to joke about it, right? The Lavas and the Golems. At this level, you can't do that, and we've seen such a big difference in the fact that Eternity always seems to have control, and everyone else that's played Golem always seems to be looking for that one opportunity.
Yeah, and it's because I think Eternity is never getting ahead of himself early on, and he's just waiting. He's always waiting for the right moment to play that Golem, as opposed to looking for it, right? Instead of looking for, like, oh man, he's probably down elixir here, maybe I can drop a Golem in the back, or maybe I should cycle my Night Witch first, and maybe I can drop a Golem up at the river. Let's see. Eternity is much more like, all right, I'm gonna defend. Oh, he probably overspent there. There's 1 elixir in my favor. I'll defend a little bit more. There's another couple in my favor. Let's Golem now.
Exactly. You're 100% right. And look, this is... we've seen this so many times, and it usually doesn't play well for the guy that's going on the bridge, man.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Eric, elaborate on that a little bit more when you're saying this isn't going well. We saw 1 E-Giant dropped in the back and 1 dropped at the bridge.
Yeah, and we've seen this over and over again, and it seems to play out. Look, I'm not saying rookies don't have a chance at winning this competition, but we've seen the mistake always come out of the rookie, right? We've seen it over and over again. Every time they see an E-Giant put in the back, it seems like this is my chance, right? This is my opportunity. Let me get some damage, and they go on the bridge. And it's just like, if he played it in the back, you can play it in the back too, and then see who gets that bridge interaction, or if you can make something special happen. You don't need to force it.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting about the beginning of what you just said there, Eric, is a reminder to everyone watching that Gamestars League is not an invitational. Everyone had to qualify. Every single person that you guys are seeing in competition have played through rounds and have qualified to get to this point. So even though there are vast levels of skill here, everyone deserves to be here in the sense that they all fought the exact same battle to get here, but it's just crazy when you look at the astronomical difference in interactions as we get farther and farther in this group stage.
It sure is, and this is what he should be doing, though. I like the mid-game adaptation. He went for it at the beginning, and he very quickly realized, okay, this is not gonna work for me, right? I'm gonna lose a game, so let me just go mirror to mirror back in my position as well. And the only difference is that little thing that I said, right? You need to make something happen. You can't just leave it there. And the person that made it happen was Eternity with the lightning. He took the creativity. He didn't just say, okay, Prince and Prince, baby dragon. He actually went for it.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a somewhat of a risky play, right? If that lightning doesn't pay off, he's going to need a lot of elixir defensively, but it really does pay off. Tower down, Goblin Cage in cycle, Baby Dragon and Ice Wizard on top of the E-Giant, and Typhoon knows exactly what is about to happen over the next 10 seconds. He's not going to touch the tower, and that is going to be it 6 games in the books today, Eric, and it's only 35 minutes into the broadcast. That means we have had 2 sweeps already, and no surprise when we talk about the 2 guys that have done it in Hugo and Eternity. We were expecting both of these gentlemen to perform very well today. I don't know if we expected 2 3-0s, but we're getting the matchup that we wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know what to expect out of the other 2 players, but like you said, we knew what we were going to expect out of these 2 players, and they proved themselves not only in level, but in their archetypes, in their understanding of the game. You know, from watching these 3 games from Eternity, I don't know Typhoon's level from this. What I do know is that Eternity has an insane understanding of these type of archetypes. He understands exactly when he needs to push, when to go in the back. You saw him put that last E-Giant on the bridge and not even think about it. He knew the situation. He knew exactly when to do what. And it shows over and over again that if you practice an archetype enough and you really take to the understanding of those pushes, of when to go in, when to defend, and you master it, you can beat anything.
Yeah, from Eternity today and One Hive yesterday, we saw a lot of really, really excellent lightning usage. And right now we're looking at the highlights of the previous set, and it's all Eternity all day long. And that's actually that push you were talking about right there, Eric, where you dropped the Electro Giant down at the bridge at the end of the game. While we have this graphic up, as you can see, 2 Golem decks, 4.5, 3.8, and then an Electro Giant at 4.3. That Electro Giant deck, obviously the most popular one in the meta right now, but now we have a very interesting matchup conversation as we get to Eternity versus Hugo. We've got 2 Golem decks and an Electro Giant deck against what we saw from Hugo in the first set. How do you think this matches up now that we are going to elevate the skill level a bit and the best players have talked about goleming against the top 1%? It's a lot more difficult than you'd imagine.
It sure is. And the only advantage that I think he has right now is the fact that all of his decks have the Ice Wiz, Baby Dragon, NATO, and either Cage or a high DPS. So it is a fairly decent match versus that Hoggies deck from Hugo, right? It's going to be very, very tough for anything to get through, especially the Mega Knight with the Hoggies against that E-Giant deck. The Cage, the Ice Wiz, the Baby Dragon, and the Lightning are all very, very strong. So I think that's going to be the main talking point for Hugo when we see all the matchups.
Yeah, Hugo, it's going to be very interesting about him creating a lot of pressure, because we saw in his first set he was a very, very patient, reactive player, as you expect the better players to usually be in sets. But knowing he already knows what his opponent has for all 3 win conditions, right? 2 Golems and an Electro Giant. And usually when you see that stuff, Eric, you want to be more aggressive in single, correct?
You do, but you also know that you're going against one of the best in it, and he's played against all these decks so many times that he knows how to beat it. And I'm sorry, when I said the talking point is that deck, I forgot he had a Minor Mortar deck. I want to see how you win with that. That is even tougher.
Wow. Yeah, that is a very, very good point that you make, because that's a really, really rough matchup in all 3 scenarios. And that's going to be an outplay situation, right? That's this is actually the most fascinating part for me for Gamestars League, is the second and the third and fourth sets of the day. Once you know what your opponent's going to bring out, and once you know that you have either a phenomenal or a horrible matchup, and how you address them, because we've seen that one deck can be the complete detriment to your day. You can't win with it, and I'm very curious to see if that happens right now in this set.
And I'm a little curious as to why Hugo didn't take that more into consideration, right? Because he said it. Eternity likes playing Lava and Golem, and when you look at these decks, they don't really, that Mortar deck doesn't really stack up well against what he expected. Yes, he can get away with the Mega Knight decks, would have been great against Lava. Well, one of them would have been great against Lava, that Hoggies one. The other one, if he did play Lava with the Barbs, it defends great against a Graveyard deck. So I'm not really sure the deck choices. He's going to have to play that Minor Mortar deck to perfection.
Yes, yeah, that's going to be the really kind of the key to victory for Hugo, is winning with that deck. Luckily for him, you see he has he has Poison in there, and he has Royal Delivery, and the Skeletons are going to help that cycle get back around. You've got the E-Barbs there to create pressure in the opposite lane when that big boy comes down, whether it's the Golem or the E-Giant. And he's got that going for him, right? If you look at all 3 of these decks that Hugo has, he can create pressure very quickly in the opposite lane. The problem is with those sellout pushes, whether it's the Hogs, the Flying Machine, the Bar Barrel plus the Graveyard, or the E-Barbs plus a Log, if you don't take a tower late game, that's so much elixir that you don't have to defend.
It's going to be all about what you just said, and I'm telling you, if there's one real chance, it's that second golem deck. That second golem deck plays with no big spell. So that's the one shot you have at really getting a lot out of your mortars, making sure it does get all that push onto the middle of the map, getting those musketeers high DPS, and then winning poison with poison miners. That's your real big chance. If you lose that match, it's looking very, very hard for you.
Yeah, those lightnings looking for musketeers are very, very brutal, especially when you talk about double and triple elixir, right? It's something that you can deal with in single, and if you bait out a lightning in single, then you can usually punish your opponent. But in double and triple with these beatdown decks, it becomes so hard because you have to drop your musketeer there. You just have to, because she's the only one that can actually do adequate enough damage. So here we go. We talked about it at the top of the show, Eric, and they did not disappoint. Hugo and Eternity battling it out here in Group G to see who gets pushed forward to our finals and who is going to have to battle it out again at the end of the week to stay alive. And actually at the end of the week to stay alive. And we'll see if Eternity's Golem or heavy decks pay off against Hugo's, I'd say, with the meta.
I'm excited, man, and I want to see which golem deck he brought out, because we see that the musketeer on the bottom means that he's trying on the top. It means that he's trying out with that mortar deck first. And this is a little bit of what you spoke about earlier. I love these second and third matches, or third and fourth sets. Why? Because now it's not only the matchups, but which deck do you play first? Which deck is going to give you the best advantage? And he's going in. This is what Hugo wanted. This is the no big spell deck.
Yes, this is the exact matchup that we wanted to see on paper, and it's crazy that it worked out here for Hugo. That you saw right there, the poison and the log working wonders against that Night Witch. Now we see those skeletons coming out to help clean up the bar barrel and help with the cycle. Well played comes out from Eternity. Now both of these gentlemen know exactly what they're stacking up against. Hugo cannot get aggressive with that mortar. He needs it defensively, and it's going to be about when he gets those E-Barbs out. Where does he find a space to get them on the board and break up Eternity's golem pushes?
This is, look, I'm very, very excited for this match, because this is the one match where I think genuinely Eternity is the one that has to outplay here. When you look at everything, you don't have a big spell, not only for the mortar, but the elite barbs, like you were just saying, right? You still need to take care of that, and you don't really have a splash damage onto them either. It's going to be one of those, I need to get the golem down, and then I need to cannon cart with the bard barrel to get damage onto both of them, and pray that my bats also do something. So it's going to be a very, very perfect push if he's going to be able to get this down.
Here we go. E-Barb's up high, Musketeer off to the side. Now it is within lightning range, but remember, that is not the spell that Eternity is rocking in this deck. There we go. High poison to help clean all those units up. No Night Witch down yet, but that's going to be fine work against the Mega Minion and the Baby Dragon. So far, not a lot of damage in on the top side of your screen, but one golem push can do it for you. And I like that Hugo is not getting ahead of himself. He is continuing to reset and recognize that he has to defend, but Eric, he can only continue to defend in this same sequence maybe a couple more times.
Yeah, I mean, the only advantage he has is those elite barbarians just do so much DPS, but he's even out of cycle with the miner. This is very good for Eternity. He knows that he does not need to worry about a counter push here, and that he's going to get another shot at this, and slowly he's just going to keep trying to break through. And if he does get to triple elixir, he might actually have a shot. Plus, the mortar is placed on the left middle and not the right middle, which is where you want it to be.
Right, which makes it so that this is a good lightning here, but again, that is not in play. It's Tornado instead, so Nado comes down, pulls all that to the center. Musketeer is off the board now. Royal Delivery comes in, but now those little golemites breaking through to the tower with the cannon cart behind. This elixir battle is starting to weigh in favor of Eternity. Now we see a bridge spam coming in. No elixir for those E-Barbs. That Musketeer going to be just enough to allow a couple Mega Minion hits.
Yeah, those Mega Minion hits are key, but he's going to need to win taking the whole tower. That's the way you win this, because the minor poisons will end up doing more damage than you'll be able to do with no spell. So yes, it helps, but he's gonna need a big connection, and this is it. Triple elixir. I would like to see a NATO with the bar barrel onto all of this, especially with the baby dragon. And there it is. He needs to get all these troops off the board, and I expect this to turn into a bridge spam at this point. Golems are going to start going on the bridge, or troops. Everything should be a bridge spam up until this game ends.
Yep, and those Golemites still taking for the baby dragon. Those E-barbs coming down just in time. 11:03 to 10:44. Miner in. Cannon cart there to defend. One E-barb does not break through. Yes, it does. Golemite up high. 806 down to 783 without poison taking in. This is Eternity's last shot to take the tower, Eric.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is game over. He doesn't have time. It takes more than 17 seconds for the golem, even if it was even, you know, still up, but it is gone. And look, Hugo won the mind game here. Hugo won the deck choice game. This is what he needed, and now he's actually in a good position, because this deck against the other two would have been terrible.
Man, yeah, I mean, I almost have nothing else to say, because this is exactly basically the only way for Hugo to get out of this set alive was to win that exact matchup, and he got it in game number 1. Now it's up to him. He knows there's 2 more golem decks and 1 E-Giant deck in play, because he just won, and he has a great opportunity with a Royal Hogs deck and a Graveyard deck to create a massive amount of pressure whenever that big boy comes down. How on earth does Eternity play himself out of this set?
It's tough, man. That one of those decks, the Graveyard Mega Knight, not only has Hunter, but it has Fisherman, and Fisherman against Golems and E-Giants is great, especially when you have a high DPS accompanying all that, and the fact that we know there's lightning, right? So there is no poison for the Graveyard. One good push could be the end of the game, and Eternity has to be very careful. That overcommit on a single elixir versus a Mega Knight Graveyard deck is the biggest punishment in the whole game. We've seen it over and over again in CRL, in all competitions. If there's one deck that you cannot make a mistake against in single elixir, is a Mega Knight Graveyard deck.
Yeah, and honestly, last game, not a lot of mistakes. Pretty masterful gameplay on both sides of the board. I loved from Hugo that he never ever got overzealous at any point in that game, not even with minor poisons, not with his mortar early on. And then on the other side of it, Eternity playing slow and then recognizing his moment to bridge spam, and he almost takes the game. That's exactly what you want to see in this winner's bracket.
It definitely is. And look, if I'm Hugo right now, I'm feeling great. Just at this point, you just have to play slow and play reactive, and then punish as soon as you see a little bit of an overcommit, which we might actually see out of Eternity, right? Because he's in that he's not full on desperation mode, but he is on the you know, on the back foot. I need to win a game. I need to get back in this, and Hugo needs to use that to his advantage.
So does Hugo try to go a little bit more aggressive here in single, or is there the danger of it being easily defended and then Eternity just drops a golem down?
Yeah, I go slow. I think what Hugo's doing is the right decision, because as soon as that golem does come down, you can go full on into the other lane. And if you do enough damage, all you need to do is hold off with that Fisherman, right? That Fisherman, or whichever deck he's using. I'm not sure exactly which of the two, but if it is the Fisherman with the Mega Knight Graveyard, you can, as soon as you see that golem go down, you can Mega Knight Graveyard on the bridge, and it's going to be very, very tough for him to defend.
Yeah, so here we go. 40 seconds left till we get to double elixir. Do you think Hugo there got that bar barrel out just to kind of poke and prod to see what his opponent was running, or was it to probably fix his cycle, make sure that the Royal Hogs were in his hand to make sure that when we get down to double elixir, he can go on the offensive?
I think it's more of that cycle just to make sure it's exactly where you want, but he did get enough information to where now he knows what deck he's running, right? One bar barrel literally just told him exactly what deck he's going up against.
Yeah, and that's definitely a great note for everyone watching, is, you know, that's a really, really good way for cheap to find out exactly what you're up against, maybe get your cycle in the right place. And now Eternity knows that as well, right? Which is why he's waiting. He's going to get down to a minute here. He's still waiting on the golem because he knows what his opponent is running. I actually think that's a great play.
Yeah, he needed to wait. He could not be the first to drop a golem because of what I said earlier. As soon as that golem goes down, you see Mega Knight Graveyard on the bridge, you lost. And
I gotta say, I love that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying go ahead to you.
I love that Mega Minion on the right-hand side just being cycled. That was just to make sure that there was a little bit of resistance in case those Royal Hogs came down, and I think that's a pretty brilliant Golem player play, right? It's 3 elixir, it's cheap, and it's just enough to make your opponent pump their brakes.
Yeah, it is, but I don't know if you noticed, on the bottom, he actually activated King Tower with a NATO onto the E-Wiz, and that is key when you're going up against Graveyard. So very, very good activation there by Eternity. And look, this is where we've been seeing the difference in someone that is a Golem player versus what we've seen earlier on.
Yeah, it's astronomically different than what we've seen other people and how they've played their Golem decks. You see these, these really, really smart cycles to the off lane. It baits out an E-Wiz there, and it prevents a Graveyard from coming down. He's able to actually get a Golem down with not having the threat of a counter push. And now you can see, once again, he recognizes where he's at elixir-wise. He drops the Night Witch instead of the Golem, and now he goes Golem down. I got to admit, I love watching him play Golem, even though I hate the card.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I do not like going up against Golem, but I do appreciate his knowledge of how to play it compared to mostly everyone else that plays it. 99% of the people, when they have a Night Witch in front, they drop the Golem right in front of the tower to stop the Night Witch and get the Golem in front. He understands it's not that big of a deal. Let me just get the Golem back, start over again, and I'll get a cycle where I'm feeling comfortable with it.
And there he goes, Night Witch right into the poison, but she stays alive, knowing the interaction there. You see a great defense here from Hugo at the top of your screen, but the control of the game has gone and shifted to the home player in Eternity. You can see he's got these Golems in a great cycle. He's getting good defenses down. That poison actually misses the tower there from Hugo, which isn't really the end of the day. It's not what he's working for, but he's just kind of in trouble at this moment, and a second Golem comes down. That's never good.
It's never good, especially when that Night Witch actually fell further behind, right? And it forced out an early Mega Knight out of him, because if he didn't get rid of that, it would have just accumulated so many bats that it would have forced a poison, and it's that snowball effect. Once you get one mistake down or one little interaction doesn't go your way, it can all go downhill.
And the cannon carts off their wheels have been doing a great job defensively for Eternity at the bridge. Now we finally see a Graveyard come down, but not a lot of defense there. Barbarrel comes out plus a baby dragon and a very, very healthy push on the other side of the board.
And this is GG, and it comes down to that King Tower activation. That is the reason why Hugo had to play it the way he did. He could not just Graveyard and get away with it like he would have originally. If he did that Fisherman Graveyard push with no King Tower activation, he wins the game. But that knowing that it's okay for that E-Wiz to be dropped on the right because I'm gonna activate King Tower just with the NATO, that was so smart out of Eternity.
There was so much brilliance from Eternity in this game. I loved the Mega Minion cycles, the Night Witch cycles, not getting a Golem in front of the Night Witch because that Night Witch was just to hold things at bay, to make sure that you could get, your Golem back down and not get attacked in the opposite lane. And that's what Eternity did over and over and over. He always covered his bases. And then when he found enough elixir, he started to get those Golem downs. And then you saw that cycle of Golems on the left-hand side. Hugo found himself on the back foot, and Eternity never let up. I loved that gameplay. That's some of the best Golem gameplay I've seen in a very long time.
It seems like we're watching Royal, right? It's been a while, man, and I miss it. As much as I don't like playing against Golem, especially playing Lava, which I do as much as I have in the past, it usually loses against Golem, but you got to appreciate the way he sees the game. It's just different than everyone else that plays Golem. It's not okay, Golem in the back, everything behind it. Everything has a purpose, and that is so important when you're playing such a heavy deck. And props to him. He got away. Look, it got away from him in the first one because of that matchup. It was just terrible, but he regains, he uses the same deck and he wins with it, and now he's not in a terrible position.
And one thing I think that's great about what you just said is everything has a purpose. And one of the cards that I think specifically that kind of caters directly to is the cannon cart. He has used the cannon cart very, very well today. And we saw the cannon cart coming off of its wheels at the bridge last matchup helped him so much to win those bridge battles, because they come off the wheels, everything retargets on top of the Golem, and then the cannon cart just sits back and helps clean everything up. So really, really great stuff from both of these guys. Game 1 goes to Hugo. Game 2 goes back to Eternity. He rocks Golem in both decks. Do we see Electro Giant? We'll have to find out.
And this is gonna be the story of this this set, right? Eternity has no rush in ever starting a match, so it's all gonna be in Hugo's hands.
Yeah, that's a really great point a really great way to put it. So does Hugo ever go aggressive? We saw last game he did not go aggressive at all in single. He just threw out a barbell to kind of see what his opponent was running and maybe fix his cycle, but then he sat back until double, and that did not work out for him. And he knows, again, his opponent is running beat down decks, but maybe a little bit of discomfort in Hugo now.
I'm thinking to myself now, if I'm Hugo, what do I do? Because generally I would say wait, you can just punish, but we saw Eternity be so smart and not drop the golem, right? He's not dropping that golem until he sees Hugo drop something, so that kind of makes you think, do I want to go in beforehand, because he's not going to make that mistake anyway.
Right. And that's what I was, kind of just trying to say, is that, like, I don't know if you can just do the same thing again because it didn't work, but also you recognize why he wants to hold the cards. It's a very tough place to be in, and we'll see kind of who calls the other's bluff first.
I'm glad I'm not in this position. I genuinely don't know what I would do if I'm Hugo here. He decides to start it off. He goes Mega Knight. We're gonna see Night Witch, so it is the other golem deck, and this is where I would like to see what he has planned for Hugo here. He does have lightning in this deck, so he needs to be very careful with the defenses and not to bundle up way too many troops.
So that poison going to help clean up that Night Witch plus the bats. That Hunter going to make good work of that Golem Fisherman down as well, with the Mega Knight still up front. And we have a massive push here on the right-hand side, and maybe with all of this, we will see Hogs come down in the opposite lane. Yeah, this is it's
the graveyard one, but that was a very bad lightning. That I'm pretty sure that cost him the game.
Yeah, that lightning just not getting what he wants. You saw that it hits the Mega Knight there, and yes, it is graveyard, not Hogs, and a lot of damage coming in here. That is probably going to be tower down, as you see the Fisherman squeezing on through. Yes, Fisherman squeaks on through. Eternity very, very upset with how that went, and it was all about that lightning. We were just praising Eternity for how patient he played the last game, and in this game, he does the exact opposite. He changed up what worked, Eric.
Yeah, you don't have to make any changes when you're winning. You have to make them when you're losing. And look, that lightning, as soon as I saw it, and I made the, that you can't see me, but my face was like one of those, no. It happens on my stream all the time where I drop it and I'm like, I know I just lost. And he knew it also. You saw it in his face. There was no way he was defending that.
Yeah, it was a really, really rough lightning, not doing what we were just praising him for, which was playing incredibly patiently. And honestly, when you talk about momentum, the momentum was definitely in Hugo's favor after game one, but it had swung back dramatically in game number 2 to where we got into game number 3 and it was Eternity's to lose, and that's exactly what he did. Hugo was the one that had to make things happen. You saw him go Mega Knight in the back, and Eternity just didn't play the way that he did in game number 2, and now we definitely find ourselves in a position where Hugo is really got the upper hand. Obviously he's up 2-1, but now he knows exactly what decks his opponent has and how to win with the one that he does.
Yeah, and I'm curious to see what Eternity chooses to go with here, right? Because you do have that E-Giant deck that has a lot more splash for the Hoggies. It has the Cage, it has the Dark Prince. So are you going to try and secure a win with that? Or are you going to force the Golem and get that win out of the way and then try and close it out with the E-Giant that you're not as comfortable with as you are the Golem? They both have their advantages, and it's going to be a tough decision for him, honestly.
So here we go. Game number 4. Eternity could be eliminated here. The beat down master who's been doing it with Golem and Electro Giant now running into Hugo, having a little bit of trouble here in the final set of the day for these two gentlemen. And a Golem out early on.
Yeah, he decides to keep the Golem deck. Maybe it's just him knowing exactly how to win this matchup. I genuinely think the other one was even better just because of the Dark Prince against Hoggies, as well as the NATO onto all the Zappies and everything with the E-Giant. It just made a little more sense to me. But look, who am I to tell Eternity what he can and can't win with the Golem?
Yeah, and that golem push dies on the vine here at the bridge. A big battle back and forth, and a nice fireball kind of cleans everything up there for Hugo. We find Hugo up by just an elixir and a half as we're about to make it halfway through our first 3 minutes.
And here we go. This is getting into eternity time, right? I don't expect them to actually. I wouldn't have even defended that. And he says, "Oops," and I think that oops was I should not have defended a barb barrel when I'm playing a golem deck. I don't think 100 HP is really gonna make the difference in this one.
Yep, and now that Mega Knight gonna come and jump on top of that tower. Mistakes beget mistakes, Eric, and just like that, Eternity is a very bad spot early on.
Yeah, this is terrible. The Night Witch even dies to the Mega Knight splash, and he has a fireball for these bats, and that is a lot of fireball value if he wants to take it. There it is. He put the Elite Barbarians behind it as well, and I think it's a little bit of desperation. There was no reason why you dropped those Elite Barbarians there. They weren't going to do anything.
Yeah, that is a really rough exchange there, a rough, let's say, minute for Eternity, and now we can see Hugo just doubling down on this offense. He does get another golem down, but Royal Hogs behind that Mega Knight are going to be very difficult to clean up.
Yeah, it's crazy when you think about how heavy this deck is. You would never expect him to lose because of an Ice Wizard, but it came down to that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of pros, and this is something that you've talked to me about. A lot of pros just say that is by far and away the best defensive card in the game. Slowing things down and piling them up and being able to nail them all together and slow them down again is just absolutely detrimental, especially to these beatdown pushes.
Yeah, this is game over. Flying Machine on tower, and I don't know how many times I've lost to a Flying Machine on tower, but I know it's one of those cards that you just hate to see. And look, it came down to Eternity, man. He didn't seem as comfortable as he did versus the other player, and it could be that he was on his back foot. He didn't really think clearly, but when I saw that barber, I was like, all right, just leave it, man. You have a golem deck, what does it matter? And we've spoken about it with every other player. You need to know when to take damage, and he did not.
Yeah, min-maxing is really imperative with any archetype, but especially with these beatdown decks. And Eternity being a beatdown lover, a bit surprised to see him make that mistake. And as you said during the game, Eric, he knew instantly that it was a mistake. He overspent on defense and he got punished for it. So Hugo, our winner of the day from France, and we'll probably be talking to him after our next matchup here to see who is going to be eliminated. But first, let's take a look at the highlights from this opening set and this great game number 1 for Hugo.
Yeah, great game number 1, and a little bit of fortune on the deck choice versus what he played against. If it would have been the golem deck that we just saw Eternity play 2 games in a row, there was absolutely no chance that you win this matchup. But he took a risk, it paid off, and after that it was pretty much smooth sailing.
Yeah, it was a really close game number 1. Great mortar defenses there, nice high poisons regularly, good bridge spam attempt from Eternity, but just not able to do it. And then we see game number 2 where he is able to do it. He overwhelms. Those cannon carts really pay off, and you called it out during the game, Eric. That King Tower activation was just brutal for this graveyard deck, but game 3 is where Hugo turned it around.
Yeah, and after game 3, you saw Hugo. Look, if you look at the face cams, that's what I love about having the cams, because I'm used to seeing the live competition. You could tell the emotion, but at least we have cams here, and you could just feel the difference in both of them, right? The Eternity seemed like he was trying to go after the win, and Hugo was just relaxed playing the game.
Yeah, and that's something after casting and for you coaching, now casting for years and years, the body doesn't lie. You can't hide it when you're sitting there playing and you're actually upset or uncomfortable. The best players in the world, they all have their tells. Every single person does. We saw it from Demon Chocolate earlier on, and we saw it in this set from Eternity. When you are uncomfortable, it is apparent, and you obviously start to make a lot of mistakes. And I'm just kind of surprised that we saw Eternity make that mistake in game number 3, where it felt like it really shifted in his favor. It really felt like he had got the momentum back. He was in the swing of things. He'd won that rough matchup in game number 2, and I was just kind of surprised to see what happened there.
It hurts, and it's one of those things where when you look back on it, I'm sure he's gonna watch the games over and be like, why did I do that, right? Because he knows how to play these decks, man. He's one of the best with it for years. So it's one of those things where maybe you lost a little bit of concentration, you made one bad decision and it threw you off for the rest of the game. But I'm sure when he looks back on that, he's going to be very, very disappointed in his play. But look, man, you have the end of the week to, come back, and if you do win that decider match, it doesn't really matter that you lost against Hugo.
Right. I mean, Hugo goes 6-1 on the day. Eternity struggles a bit in his second set, but I feel like for Demon Chocolate or Typhoon, whoever does win this last set, this last BO5 of the day, they're definitely going to have their work cut out for them when they go up against Eternity. I mean, maybe next time we see him later on this week, he only rocks one Golem deck, or maybe only 2 beatdown decks, and the third one's a little bit faster. But honestly, with the way that he played, I don't think he has to change up the decks. It was just the way that he played in his second set.
Yeah, and if he does go against Typhoon, I think he's going to be, very, very confident. Typhoon is going to be very, worried, because that first set, I didn't see any point where Eternity could have lost, right? So if I'm Eternity right now, I'm praying that Typhoon moves on and that I could play him again.
So here we go. This is the matchups that we know so far, or thus far, from Typhoon and Demon Chocolate. And, pretty much all things that are really on brand for the meta right now. That Mega Knight Royal Hogs deck is something that we talked about at the top of the show, being very, very popular in the first few days of GSL, and then falling out of fashion over the last few. So we'll see what we have here in game number 1. Typhoon, bottom of your screen. Demon Chocolate at the top. Liner out early.
And they both have one deck that we haven't seen either, so I'm curious to see what that is. And a quick little minor chip and some Spear Goblins coming out doesn't really affect that much. And I do like getting the Mother Witch out of the way early.
Yeah, is there a point, Eric, when you have to stop fireballing Tower and Mother Witch, or is there... It feels like when the Mother Witch or the Magic Archer comes down, you should always just fireball them. But I've definitely found situations where it is an overspend early on and you get punished for it.
The biggest problem is when you have this type of deck. I think when you have Typhoon's type of deck, you have to constantly do it, because if not, the Mother Witch is going to turn into a Hoggy's machine with the bats and the Spear Goblins and all your small little troops. You really need to get it out of the way.
Got it. So yeah, that's a really solid point that you make. If you do have something that the Mother Witch can get a lot of value off of, that is a very, very good reason to fireball her off the board early on. And that's also the key to victory when you have the Mother Witch in your deck. I've played this deck that Demon Chocolate is running, and I've found that obviously you can get good value from the E-Barbs, and obviously if you get good defenses, you want to RG in the back and great Fisherman pulls and yada, yada, yada. But when you rock this deck that Demon Chocolate has and you can get a lot of value out of that Mother Witch, it is so brutal to defend.
Yeah, and here we go. This is that value, right? And he did get it off the board. He was very quick with it. You can tell that he had it hovered over, waiting for that Mother Witch. But now he doesn't have defense for the RG. Great offense, but you still need to defend, my friend.
Yeah, and I almost would have even liked to see that log hit all 3 Spear Goblins and not the tower, maybe get a little bit more damage in. Either way, I think it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, 960 remaining on the bottom left-hand tower, 1174 on the top right. Demon Chocolate sets up again with an RG in the back, and this should be a pretty easy defense for him.
Yeah, I don't like this push at all if I'm talking about Typhoon's push, just because that's your DPS for the RG. You don't need to win. You don't need to take the tower right now. You have a minor deck. You benefit off of chip later on in the game. So now how do you defend this without the Elite Barbarians?
I don't know. 2 RGs down. Bats are going to have to wait until that Mother Witch connects onto anything. Now they come down. E-Barbs go opposite lane to try to make something happen, and Demon Chocolate gets a tower early on with some easy defense here from Typhoon's odd pushes, we'll call them.
It's just, this comes down to the same thing we spoke about Golem. You can tell when someone is very comfortable with cycle decks and mortar decks. And look, I'm a little bit critical because I had the best player in the world and probably the best player in history with minor mortar. I don't think there's anyone that comes close to him other than Lapo. But throughout the years, we saw that Lapo, as good as he is with mortar, he's more of a cycle player in general. Igor was that mortar minor god. And that's why I'm very critical when I'm watching this, because I had the honor of coaching the best in the world. And look, this was far from the best when you talk about that minor mortar gameplay.
And correct me if I'm wrong here, Eric, but I think one of the biggest things about why Igor was so great was those minors are always on the board. He is so good at cycling late game and creating tons of pressure with those miners always being on the board. That was something that we missed here from Typhoon. We needed to see him defend with the mortar more regularly and get those miners out offensively.
Yeah, and apart from that, it's what type of miners are on the board, right? You will never see Igor miner elite barbarians on the bridge going up against an RG. It just doesn't happen. There's no reason for it because the elite barbarians don't get to tower when there's Skelly's Ice Spirit on the field for the other opponent. So all you have to do is mortar elite barbarians defensively and get chip over time, and then when you have it ready, then you can go with that minor fireball elite barbarians full push and close it out.
Yeah, just not getting enough out of your miners, and that's something that, I mean, I think that also shows a level of experience. Is you see the best players in the world being very, very happy with 1 or 2 miner hits as their only damage every cycle, right? But those miner hits add up over time, and not only do they add up damage-wise, they start to become so mentally impactful for your opponent. They're always waiting for him, they're always looking for him, they're always trying to catch him, they're always trying to keep track of your cycle, and that's when they start to make mistakes.
Another big talking point that I've realized over the years, especially, you know, talking with Igor of why he plays things the way he does, is it's more important to get your opponent frustrated that he's never going to break through your mortar than it is to get extra damage with some elite barbarians. And I think that's why Typhoon kind of lost there, because he never put Demon in a position to make a desperate offense, right? He was always comfortable. RG in the bag. Okay, you're gonna minor elite barbarians. I'll just elite barbarians on my side and take care of absolutely everything. If Typhoon just played very defensive, that RG would have never got a hit on tower, and that would have been so frustrating for Demon.
That's like a brilliant and fascinating way to look at the game, and it makes sense why Igor is who he is. It's more frustrating for your opponent to never break through your mortar than it is to get chip damage, and that is something that I definitely need to take home and put to practice, because it is true, when you play against those great mortar players and all they do is just mortar defensively and just chip away, it's infuriating.
It is. It's so frustrating, and at least I was on the right side of it, because I could not imagine playing against it or like watching my players play against it and just sitting there and watching them constantly hit that wall of mortars. It's so frustrating to watch.
And we are in a bit of a standstill right now. 3 towers remaining with 25-34, only just a little breath of damage on the bottom left-hand tower of Typhoon. 24-46, the no win condition deck at the top of your screen here from Demon Chocolate. Bottom of your screen going to be all about that Electro Giant.
Yeah, and it's the NATO, the density, we spoke about it.
Yep.
You need to know those interactions. I was never gonna get to the King Tower, and even then, I'm pretty sure Demon saved Typhoon from losing the game earlier. If he waited 1 more second with the elite barbarians, I was about to say he's gonna place an E-Giant in front of that Ice Wizard and that Baby Dragon, and if he did that and then elite barbarian from Demon came down, he would have lost the game. So he got a little lucky there.
Yeah, and I'm also curious if Typhoon, and you know, again, if this is maybe not the best interaction, let me know. But, you know, when those E-Barbs come down at the bridge, why not try to kite to the opposite lane with a high E-Giant? He dropped it anyway. They're going to get damage down. You have an Ice Wizard behind. It might be an easy way to turn some defense into offense. Yeah,
I'm not really sure why he didn't do that. And he is going to probably win the game at this point. Great lightning out of him, and it's just it goes to show how strong this E-Giant is right now. He needs to survive 1 last cycle, because we do know that that is the only spell that he has other than NATO, but I'm pretty sure NATO does not do 70 onto tower.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, yeah, you just said it. The E-Giant is just so insanely strong right now. It felt like he didn't play the better game. It felt like Demon actually played a better game for a long time, but then there at the very end, getting a little aggressive, a couple E-Barbs pushes on the right-hand lane for Demon, not using them defensively, and then finally getting him back down for a very, very value lightning, and we're all even up.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I would have defended there or not, and that push that Demon went all on defense, that last push, and then they got lightning. There was only about 300-400 tower damage left on Typhoon's bottom right, So when that E-Giant comes down, you might just want to go full on bridge spam, bandit, elite barbarians, everything on the bridge and see what happens, because that defense was never going to hold.
And that was something that we've kind of talked about a decent amount, which is just understanding the macro in those moments of, yes, this might not work, but I'm definitely going to lose that tower, so I need to make something happen. And just not able to do it there was Demon, but we're all even 1-1 from our players from Kazakhstan and from Russia, and we'll see what matchups we're going to see here in game number 3. Honestly, this does feel like a very, very even set thus far.
It does, and the only thing I want to say is I need them to get a little more comfortable in this tournament. Not for this match, but whoever plays Eternity, right? You're gonna have to elevate a little if you're gonna beat him, because I do see the difference in when we saw Hugo and Eternity play and this matchup right now. These players, you can tell they're not as comfortable as we saw for the other two.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. And, you know, maybe a big part of that is just deck selection. You know, Eternity went straight comfort, but I don't think it's just that. I think it has a lot more to do with these knowledge of interactions. And that, I believe, was a pretty nice rocket.
It was, but that's not going to hold for the rest of the game. If that's going to be your defenses, man, you're going to be in a rough position, because it is 6 elixir rocket. And look, that push was a slow push, but as time goes on, those are going to get a lot more violent with those hoggies, with the flying machine in the middle, and you know, all the split lane pressure. So he's going to need to figure out a different way of defending.
Yeah, we heard Typhoon talk about it in the pre-show that Expo is his other favorite win condition. So I think we might be seeing our very first appearance of the Expo so far. You know, Ice Bow, Ice Rocket, whatever you want to call it. I think that could be what we're seeing.
Yeah, and this is without a doubt the most frustrating Xbox deck to play against. There is no question about it. You can say you don't like playing against the other one, but this is defense, and then I'm just gonna rocket onto your tower in the last 30 seconds with triple elixir.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the talking points that Rich and I had when we were trying to figure out what to call this deck. A lot of people had been calling it Ice Bow, but then more people started calling it Ice Rocket, because that Expo, as you just called, Eric, is going to be a defensive card right now. Defend, and then maybe rocket out to end the game. And, you know, we've seen that a million times with this deck, and it works out well. However, look at those hogs, man.
Yeah, and it was the Mega Knight tanking for them that nothing could actually take care of them. That Ice Wiz, we know, it slows it down, sure, but it doesn't actually do any damage to all those hoggies.
So here we go. E-Barbs meet that Expo down low. Skeletons come down after the Knight. No connection here on the right-hand side, and not an overspend there from the Mother Witch. Trying to get maybe a couple Skeletons out. It does turn into a bit of an overspend.
This is where you see the difference in the best Expo players and someone that is right at the edge of being the best. You cannot get flustered at the fact that you took damage. Continue to play defensively. You win with spell damage. You have a rocket. You have a faster cycle. You need to relax. Don't go over offensive. Don't get frustrated. He's even playing Expos on the right side when he has 1600 on the left side, right? So he needs to maintain calm. Yes, you took damage. Yes, it's not looking great, but overall you still win this match.
Yeah, we've seen so many players here in GSL start to do things that aren't working when the things that have been working, there's no reason to change them up. So we're going to see right now how Typhoon wants to deal with this push. We're going to see a dual lane push here from Demon Chocolate, maybe Hog split in the middle. We're about to find out. Flying Machine behind that Mega Knight to snipe, hopefully, that Ice Wizard. Rocket on top of the E-Barbs.
Yeah, and now he's going to go in exactly that, but he should have something to deal with this. Good defensive Expo, good damage dealt on Demon's side with 2 little hoggies hitting and the poison. And the good thing that Demon is doing is keeping up the pressure and forcing out the rockets, but this is where it gets tricky. Triple elixir, he can cycle so quickly that as long as he stays within 1 full rocket damage cycle, he'll win this game.
So here we go. Probably Rocket going to come out here on the right-hand side. Yes, it does. Nice Rocket there to clean up those E-Barbs. Expo still very, very healthy on the board. Nice NATO to pull everything together. Log comes in. Hog's relatively healthy because of that barb barrel, but still no damage in. And now maybe a Rocket comes out. No, he goes back to Tesla.
he needs to start rocketing. There can no longer be defensive rockets. He won't win the game. There is poison on the other side. Defensive rocket. Now you don't have enough. No, this is it.
And that's a bad rocket. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a bad rocket. It hits the wrong two cards. Mega Knight stays very healthy. Piggy's in on the right-hand side, going to work their way to that tower. Flying Machine down at the bridge. This is a bridge spam battle now. Rocket does come out. The poison is in. Flying Machine's going to connect.
Oh my god.
Gosh, he holds it.
He got it. I can't believe he tanked the Flying Machine last second. I thought it was over because when I saw the rocket come in and the poison being down, the skellies disappear. So I was like, okay, something's gonna get on tower. He was able to tank it with 1 millisecond left. It was just perfect. I mean, fortunate that he just had that elixir to get it. That triple elixir gives you that leeway, but good for him, even though it got a little tricky, a lot more tricky than he expected for sure.
Yeah, it got really, really dicey there at the end. That rocket coming in, I think it was on top of a Flying Machine and a Mother Witch. Misses the Mega Knight, but still enough damage on the board. Enough defense on the board there for Typhoon. He wins with one of his comfort decks. And we saw Demon Chocolate do what he did again in set number 1 after taking a very rough loss. And it's a very emotional reaction, which you can't fault him for it, but I do worry about his mindset going into this next elimination game. You don't want to get too tilted. That was a great game, but that is a very tilting deck to lose to.
It sure is. And look, we all love to see emotions out of the players. We love it. We always, we joke around that when Morden's playing, there's just, you can't tell whether he wins or loses by the cam because it's always the same. And as much as I like to see emotions, you got to be very careful with how emotional you are. This is a very mental game.
Yeah, totally. And here we go. Demon going aggressive here to start. Royal Hogs met with the fireball. A little bit of damage is going to come in.
Yeah, and this is a pretty basic start. We know what deck is coming up on top. And I mean, look, if you want 2 spells against this deck, it is Log and Fireball. So overall, not too bad, but he is going to have a tough time defending a full-on Mega Knight push if he plays as aggressive as he did the last time. Please don't miner here. Just relax and play this the way it's meant to be played. Chip away.
And that Mother Witch gets a little bit of value, gets 2 hogs down on the board. Now some bats come out defensively, knowing that the Mother Witch is out of cycle. And we'll see which one of these guys gets a little bit excited. That does seem to be one of the biggest problems, is getting a little too excited early on instead of sitting back and letting the game come to them. And it does seem like with those piggies out early that Demon wants to make something happen here in game number 4.
He sure is. And look, this is going to be one of those games where Demon actually should be aggressive. You cannot sit back over and over and over again, because eventually once that miner does come in and start chipping away, you probably will lose, especially in that double elixir when the mortar can be played defensively and he could just fireball your Flying Machine or delivery it like he's being done there. So I would like to see some aggression out of Demon. Don't let him get into that double elixir where we know that miners can just keep cycling.
2 missed interactions there from Typhoon. First, the Royal Delivery comes in a bit early, so the Flying Machine stays on the board, and then you see the bats come down on top of it because he wants to mitigate 100% of that damage, but the Flying Machine still connects. Typhoon down by about 200 HP, or about $150 here as we get into double.
Yeah, and look, as much as I said don't miner too aggressively, I didn't mean don't miner at all, right? Just you still need to be chipping away at some point.
Yeah, and that's something that we talked about just a little bit ago, highlighting why Igor is such a great mortar miner player, is now that he's in double elixir, get those miners out, move them around, get that spell value in, start to make things happen on the other side of the board, because these Mega Knight plus Royal Hogs plus E-Barbs pushes, you're not going to be able to deal with them as this game keeps going on. And there you go, big push in on the left-hand side, no Fireball in cycle, Log out of cycle as well, and now the Royal Hogs come down.
This is GG.
Wow, no delivery there.
No, he did. Wow. He used it on the Flying Machine originally, and you know what? It seems weird to say, and a lot of people probably don't realize it, but my biggest mistake in this game was that when he did use a miner right before all this happened, he put down Spear Goblins as well. Igor, if you watch his games, Igor, Lapo, Mohammed Light, all these players, those spear goblins defensively are actually very, very good, and they're hard to get to, right? If you place them correctly, they didn't really do anything on offense, and they weren't necessary. What were you gonna do? Chip 100 more? They're a lot more useful on defense. He didn't have them defensively, and when you saw how much damage that Mega Knight and the Elite Barbarians had on them, how much HP, they would have all died to the Spear Goblins.
So Demon Chocolate does end up staying alive, and I think that's a really great thing for you to point out. It's something that I probably make the mistake of a lot as well. You think Miner plus Spear Goblins, they all connect on tower, you get several hundred damage, but it's also a 5 elixir push that can basically be stopped for any cheap spell. And that is something that we saw, and especially now with how much the E-Barbs are prevalent in the meta, and the fact that you can activate King Tower with Spear Goblins down low after you get that Mega Knight pulled to the center of the map. Yeah, maybe just not using those cheap cards to their utmost, which is what the best players in the world do, getting values out of Ice Spirits, Spear Goblins, Ice Golems. That's how you make those positive elixir trades that swing games.
They definitely do, and that's part about being the best, right? I think we've also had the pleasure of watching it so much that it's something we expect at this point, but it really is a very, very hard thing to do, to win with these type of decks. And that's a risk that you take when you decide to use one in a tournament like this. You have to win with it.
So rocking the same deck is Typhoon. Mother Witch going to still be a nuisance in this matchup. You saw the Miner there go to the inside on the first drop, knowing that Tornado is not in play in this deck.
Yeah, and this is it, man. This is you're fighting for your life at this point, and I'm gonna need to see a very, very, very smart play if you're gonna win with this Miner deck, and it's already looking very bad.
Yeah, already looking very, very bad.
Over.
It is already over. Bandit on the left-hand side, E-Barb on the right. Typhoon already completely overwhelmed. Down below 1,000 HP on both sides of the board. And yeah, basically over already.
It hurts to watch, because when you have a deck like this, the one thing you can't do is fall behind. It's a controlled deck. You're meant to, if you want, you should never allow damage. If you truly want and you truly understand this type of deck, there should be no way your opponent gets any damage, especially in single elixir.
Yes, and that's a very, very important thing to note, is that it's single elixir. Yes, I mean, obviously what you're saying, you're expecting people to play at the highest level, and they shouldn't be allowing damage in with a control deck, but especially in single elixir. That is literally the one part of the entire 5 minutes where the game is completely in your favor. And we see another Bandit dash in on that left-hand side, adding insult to injury.
Yeah, this is I mean, this is game over. I don't really see any way where he can actually come back from this, and even then spawning a Hoggy that forces out a log, and it still gets a hit, and the Mother Witch forcing out,
man.
You know, you can't play Spear Goblins into a Mother Witch either, you know. It's just...
We were just talking about the value of those Spirit Goblins and definitely hitting the panic button there a little bit. Now we see Crimson going all in on the right-hand side, but we talked about this yesterday with this no-win condition deck, or maybe it was earlier today, but it's very, very strong defensively. There's so much tankage on the board, so much single-target DPS, and of course the Ewiz and the Mother Witch if you are running up against something in the skies. And now we see a defensive mortar come out too late, Fireball in, Mother Witch on tower, GG, well played, and Demon Chocolate will be moving on forward after a very, very rough outing today, starting 0-3, coming into the set down 1-2. He plays and wins back-to-back games, and we'll be seeing more of that young man at the end of this week. Typhoon, thank you so much for playing, my friend. Just not going to be your day today. Eric, what are some of the biggest takeaways that you have from what we just saw in that set?
I mean, it comes down to, you need to win with every deck. So when you pick these 3 decks, you need to make sure that you are extremely comfortable with it. It is better to use the same archetype twice and just change some spells than to try and venture off into something that you're not as comfortable with. We've seen it, I think, in 3 out of the 7 days or 4 out of the 7 days, someone loses because they legit can't win with one out of the other decks, when the other 2 decks, they actually played very well.
Yeah, and that's a really, really I think important thing to note when you talk about Typhoon's gameplay today, that mortar deck specifically, we saw him lose with it in game number 1, and then also in that last game, you know, it was the fact that he only got down 1 mortar in that entire matchup that lets you know that that was just not played correctly. Yes, you
Exactly.
could be uncomfortable, and yes, you can change up your play style, but only getting 1 mortar down is always a mistake when you talk about going from you know, start to finish.
Yeah, and just you can tell it wasn't something he was, you know, really practiced or well versed in, because look, these decks, as frustrating as they are to play against, if you don't play against someone that's very good with it, they're actually pretty easy to win against. One mistake and it's all over, and we saw that here. So look, if you're coming up and you're playing in the next couple of days, or you're playing a tournament with this type of format, please make sure you're comfortable with all 3 decks, because you cannot get away with not being as good with one and great with the other 2.
And look at it, it's right there. It's all in the numbers. You look and see 25%, 33%, 100%, 100%, 33, and then a glaring 0 in the top right with that mortar deck. And, you know, to talk about it just a bit more, those mortars need to come out defensively a lot more regularly. He needs to get way more minor chip damage. Those spear goblins need to be used defensively a lot more often against those e-barbs. And I think also to know what you said, Eric, is those spear goblins are really difficult to get to if you cannot just zap them off the board or snowball them off the board. You see his opponent, he has log and 1 deck. Otherwise, it's just poisons, fireballs, and barb barrels. So those spear goblins could have gotten a lot more value. And then the last thing to note is 3 Mother Witches in 3 decks. Is it the best thing to be rocking a lot of squishy cards at the moment?
Yeah, it's definitely not. And on the other end, it's a smart decision to run Mother Witch over and over again. We saw it at the beginning of the broadcast, which is the cards that are most being used with the highest win rate: Elite Barbarians, Mother Witch. Why not include it in all 3 decks?
Yeah, I mean, completely. And you know, we still haven't seen the shift here in GSL with the E-Barbs falling out of fashion yet and getting that Mama P.E.K.K.A in. I'm a little bit surprised because we saw E-Barbs so much today, and the other card that we saw a lot of was that Mega Knight. So we'll see. I mean, a lot of people have honestly just been rocking decks that have E-Barbs in them, and then just taking out the E-Barbs and putting in the P.E.K.K.A. Yes, it makes it a little bit more expensive, but it is basically a direct counter to those E-Barbs and creates a very good counter push. So that's enough of our speculation. We do have a champion to talk to today in Hugo, a man that you and I were both excited to see play today, and he did not disappoint. Hugo, how are you, man? Great job today.
I'm really happy, and I think I played good today.
Yeah, you definitely played very well today. In that last matchup against Eternity, you had that mortar deck. And were you happy when you saw that first matchup? Because I think, looking at it from my point of view, that was the only real matchup that you had an advantage in, as opposed to when he had Lightning in the other 2 decks.
Yeah, I prepared my deck to play versus Eternity with this motor. When I put a poison, it's for the golem, of course. And yeah, I think I have a good matchup, and he played well, but I won.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really happy to hear that, because it was something we talked about on broadcast. Was you looked at the way that you built your decks, and it looked like you were looking specifically for Eternity's Golem and Night Witches. Do you think it was a mistake from him to rock Golem, and Electro Giant, since he is so famous for playing Beatdown?
I don't know if it's a mistake, but yeah, that's the deck is playing super well Golem, and yeah, maybe playing 2 times Golem is a big mistake, but I don't know.
Yeah, and talking about that a little bit, how do you feel in this type of format? Do you like the way it is for your play style? Moving on, you know, now you're gonna have to play against a higher level, the champions in Mateja, One Hive Hunter, Lucas, GSM. Do you like this format for your play style?
At the first time, that looks really weird, but it's a pretty interesting format. We have 3 decks, and we need to win with those 3 decks. So there is you can win with many archetypes, so one tricking a deck is not possible. So yeah.
So in game number 2, Hugo, it felt like that was when you had really taken control of the set, but then somehow Eternity was able to take game number 2 from you. What did you do in game number 3 to adjust and kind of take control of the set again?
He has activated the King Tower with the Electro Wizard. Yeah, that was a big part of the game, and he just built like 2 golem, and I'm just focused on the defense. Yeah, it's really complicated for me to attack him with the King Tower activation. I need to have a Mega Knight to tank, and I can't with the push he is doing. So he played well.
Yeah, definitely. And you played very, very well today. Last question for you before we let you go, Hugo. Is there anyone in the tournament who you specifically want to beat? Is there someone that you're looking to play here in Gamestars League?
I think I really want to play again Mateja, because he is one of the best in the competition. So yeah, Mateja.
Yeah, well, I know that Eric and I would be very, very excited to cast that match. Great job today, man. Congratulations on taking first place in Group G, and I guess we'll be seeing you in just a couple weeks for our finals.
Yeah, of course. I will prepare my deck and play like I do every time.
Excellent, man. Take care.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Great stuff from Hugo there. I mean, honestly, it's what we've seen from a good amount of these guys. We saw it from One Hive Hunter yesterday as well, right? Very, very calm throughout the gameplay. Very, very calm in the interview. And I think you even made the joke. It's the same thing. I don't know if he won. I don't know if he lost. I don't know if he's asleep. I don't know if he's awake.
Yeah, he's just, it's the game that he loves, and he said it. At the beginning, look, I played well. He knows that he played well, and that's all he had to do to really move on. He didn't come in and say, I played the best Clash Royale in my life. No, I played what I had to do. Same thing with One Hive when we asked him yesterday. He said, I know that I could come in with these type of decks, play against these type of players, and win just playing well. And that's what they both understood, and it paid off.
Yeah, he put in the practice. He got the decks out that he wanted to play. He got the matchups that he needed, and he made sure to play through the good matchups and out of the bad one. Guys, this is day 7 of the Gamestars League. You just saw Group G, and you saw our winner of the day making it on through to our finals. We have Group H tomorrow, and on Thursday and Friday, Eric and I will be battling it out through those 2nd and 3rd place positions to figure out who all of our finalists will be, to battle it out for over $30,000 here in Gamestars League. For myself and Eric Benamou, and for everyone at GSL, thank you so much. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place for Group H. Keep on clashing.